Welcome and thank you for standing by. Currently, all participants are in a listen-only mode. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I'd like to turn the call over to your host for today, Deb Rivera. Deb, you may begin.
Great, thank you so much. Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar event on the ABCs of the Census API. This is your host, Deb Rivera. Today we will introduce you to the API through a few core concepts and also do a live demonstration of the Census Bureau's Application Programming Interface, or the API, in action. So I want to take a few moments and thank my Census Bureau colleagues for joining me and helping to support our speaker for today. And before I turn things over to our presenter, I do have a few housekeeping items that I'd like to go over. We have a panel of experts available to answer your questions through the question and answer panel. We would like to encourage you all to make use of the Q&A panel in WebEx to submit your questions throughout the presentation so you don't have to wait until the very end. To submit your questions, make sure to use the Q&A panel and select the All Panelists option from that drop-down menu, and this will allow all of our panelists to see your question. I, in turn, will be using the chat panel to send you all helpful information, including instructions, site URLs, and contact information. So again, for questions, please use the Q&A panel, make sure to use the All Panelists option, and look to the chat panel for links and other helpful information. So at the end of the webinar, we will be taking your questions through the WebEx audio line. And for this portion, we will ask that participants use the raise hand icon in WebEx to indicate to us that you do have a question. You will then be allowed to unmute yourself and ask your question. A quick note about the question and answer session. Today, it will be focused on the Application Programming Interface, or the API. We will not be able to go in depth to address questions on data.census.gov, the data collection process, methodology, or 2020 census products. And now just one more thing, we are recording the webinar today, and all of the materials for this training will be made available through the Census Academy website. We'll be sure to send that link out to you all as well. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and it is now my pleasure to introduce our presenter, Tyson Weister. Thank you, Tyson.
Thank you, Deb, and thank you all so much for tuning into the webinar, The ABCs of the Census API. My name is Tyson Weister, and I work on the communications team in the Center for Enterprise Dissemination at the U.S. Census Bureau. We are responsible for data.census.gov and the API. So today we're going to be focusing on the API. This webinar is going to help you, regardless if you're someone who maybe has used APIs before and isn't familiar with the layout of data in the Census Bureau's API, or if you're brand new, have never used an API in your life, but maybe you're familiar with Census Bureau data. This will give you basic introductory skills to get you started. So we're going to open up with a little bit of an overview of the Census API. We'll talk about the different components of building an API data request, and then we're going to do a live demonstration walking you through. Everything for this webinar is recorded, as mentioned. There will be slides that step-by-step walk through everything that I show you during the live demonstration, so don't get worried if you're wanting something to reference back on. You'll definitely have plenty of resources, and we'll also show you some more resources to learn more at the end. And one thing I did want to mention is we're going to be focusing in the webinar today on accessing the URL or the API through a web browser. So essentially, we're just going to be getting example URLs, making edits to those URLs, and asking the API to return us data that we'll be able to see on screen. So to get started here, there are different APIs available, and I wanted to give a little bit of context for the focus for today. So we're going to be focusing on the Census Data API. This has raw statistical data from programs and surveys across the Census Bureau. With that, we do have two other APIs at the Census Bureau for geography information. One is called the Geocoder, and that gives you address information and latitude, longitude. So it will tell you census geographies that a particular address falls within, as well as that latitude, longitude reference information. We also have Tiger Web services available through API if you're looking to get boundary information to create your own maps. Again, we're focusing today on statistical data from the Census Bureau in the Census Data API. Now, why would you want to use the API? It allows you to access our data in a standardized way. It supports mobile and web applications, whether you want to build one on your own or consume one from the Census Bureau that is powered by the API. We use them to drive interactive data visualizations. You can use the API to connect directly to your own statistical software like SAS or R. And some advantages of getting the data from the API versus other sources include the ability to access just the variables and geographies that you need, nothing more, nothing less, immediate access to updates, no need to download, store, or host data on your own. You can call it directly from the API. And there are more data on the API than what is available on data.census.gov. So you'll see some more data sets, as well as, for instance, historical data from the American Community Survey that you can access on the API versus what you see on data.census.gov. So lots of different advantages, but wanted to paint a picture of one way that the API is being used. It is powering data.census.gov. So if you're familiar with the Census Bureau's primary platform to access data and have used it before, all of your tables, charts, and maps on data.census.gov are being pulled in real time from the Census Bureau's application programming interface and fed on your screen in a user-friendly way. So this does mean that any data you see on data.census.gov is available if you prefer to access it directly from the API. That is an option for you. Other examples of the API in action include interactive visualizations. I mentioned this earlier. One example is the American Community Survey Data Wheel interactive visualization and a What Can I Learn from the American Community Survey. So now to get more into the how to use the API, I wanted to give you an overview of different surveys and programs that are available. If you go to the Discovery tool, which we will be doing later, there's over 1,600 data sets in the API. What you're seeing on the screen here is a high-level summary of the different types of surveys and programs. So we're going to show you different examples from both demographic and economic data in our examples today, focusing on the American Community Survey, Decennial Census, and the County Business Patterns program. But you can see there's a lot of other data available and accessible to you through the API. Do note that if you're calling or requesting data from the API, you do need to know a little bit about which survey or program you're wanting data from first, and sometimes even more nuances about the different types of data that these programs provide. If you'd like more training on that, I encourage you to check out other training resources from the Census Bureau on Census Academy. But moving forward, all of the supported geographies at the Census Bureau that you see in data.census.gov, of course, are also in the application programming interface. So depending on the survey or program you're accessing data for in the API, you may see a wide range of geography availability from as high as the nation down to as low as census tracts, block groups, or blocks. This slide shows the relationships between the different geography areas that I won't go into detail today on. It also shows in red, those are geographies supported by certain economic surveys and programs. So to get started in the API, you want to get to the developers page on census.gov/developers or api.census.gov. On the landing page, you'll notice that we refreshed this look and feel to make our materials more accessible and useful for you. A couple things I wanted to note here on the landing page. One is you'll see a couple different instances of request a key. If you do want an API key, you're able to request one free of charge. It's associated with your email address. We do recommend that you sign up for one in all cases, but it isn't required. It's only required if you're using more than 500 API requests for data from your IP address in a single day. So we're not going to be exceeding that limit. We're not going to be using a key, but did want to point out it's available to you. And then the other thing that is also of note is the discovery tool. So you'll see a link that I've shown here on the screen for the discovery tool. That's what's listing the 1,600 plus data sets that are available. And it has all of the information in order to make an API data request. So the discovery tool for each data set will have an example API URL that you can edit. It will also list out all of the different variables that are accessible from that particular survey and program. So the focus for today is going to show you how to navigate into the discovery tool to get data you're looking for and edit it to your specific requests. The discovery tool is available in a variety of formats: HTML, XML, and JSON. For today, we're going to be primarily viewing data in a web browser, so I'm going to be referencing HTML URLs. And then once you get to a data set in the discovery tool, every data set has information shown here. So you'll see a title for the data set and description. And the main two things that I've touched on earlier that we're going to be working with is clicking into the examples that will list out example queries. So you don't have to create something from scratch. You can just tweak something that's already made for you. And then the variables, which provides the types of data you can access from that particular data set. But there are other helpful information included throughout these links, such as the list of all available geographic levels for the data set, groups or list of tables for the data set, as well as links to documentation. So with that overview, and before we get into the live site, I just want to walk through really quickly what an API request looks like. Again, not so that you can build it from scratch, but just so that you can recognize the different portions of the URLs we're going to be working with. So every request for data is going to start with api.census.gov/data. Next, you'll see the dataset name. So typically this will reference the year, or it may say the word time series, and then it will show the dataset name and type. So in this case, it's an example pulling data from the 2018 Population Estimates Program Characteristics of Age Groups dataset. After the dataset name, you'll see $get equals, and that is your indication that you're asking the API to return data to you. Then you'll list your variables, and you can list up to 50 variables separated by a comma. Here we're getting an example showing the population, the geography name or geo name, as well as the reference period, which is the date description. And specifically, this population is being limited to race code 10 for the Hispanic population group. And then here we can see &4 equals county, &in equals state 24. So the final portion is the geography. It's asking, or you telling the system what levels or level of geography you want data for. The wildcard or asterisk means you want data for all values or all counties, and state code 24 happens to be Maryland. So this is an example asking for those population numbers in Maryland. Once you put everything together and run the request, for today we're going to be just entering it into our address bar in the URL. you will see the data on your screen. It's going to be provided in a JSON format, and it's going to look something like this. So here it shows that population number for race code 10 is 7,391 people. That is for Charles County, Maryland. And the vintage of population estimates being referenced is the July 1st, 2018. So with that, just basic information as far as the different components of the URL and what you're going to be getting back, we are ready to transition towards the live demonstration throughout these 3 examples. The goal for the end of the training is for you to be comfortable finding available data sets in the API, navigating the discovery tool, editing those sample URLs I've mentioned to access the data you need, viewing results in your web browser, and saving them as a CSV file. And we'll talk about some ways that you can format that file into a readable format, though many of you working with APIs may be using more advanced access methods. Now, our first example is going to come from the American Community Survey, and I wanted to take a brief moment to provide some background information. The American Community Survey and Decennial Census have thousands or tens of thousands of variables in a single data set. So because of that, they can't use readable abbreviations for their data variables. They use a code-based naming convention. In this example, the code is DP04_0046PE, and that is referencing percent owner-occupied housing units. For example, 53.6% in Alameda County, California. Now, how do you break down this code-based naming convention and make sense of it? They are table-based. So if you were to cross-reference on data.census.gov, you can see this example, DP04 is the table ID. 0046 means it's the 46th row of data. And if you're counting down from the table, you would want to skip any of these blank labeling only lines that don't have any data values. So you'd skip over this one that says housing tenure as an example. And then the last part, PE, means percent estimate. It's referring to the percent column. With that code-based naming convention, you may see other ending to the variables names, such as E, M, PE, or PM. The E refers to the estimate, PE refers to percent estimate, and the ones that end in M are for the corresponding margins of error. Also of note at the bottom, there are common variables such as geo_ID and name. In the ACS datasets, this gives you the geography name and geography ID, which we'll be talking about more in just a moment. And then the last thing in accessing ACS data is you do need to know the type of table up front. And the reason for this is because the APIs have different endpoints or different beginnings to the URL is another way you could describe it, depending on the different table that you're trying to access data from. So detailed tables end in 2020/ACS/ACS1, data profiles end in profile, comparison profiles end in C profile, etc. If you'd like to learn more about the different types of tables from the ACS, I recommend checking out our training programs or the link. And if you're not sure where to start and you know you want ACS data, I highly recommend giving the data profiles a first try. They contain data from all topics of the ACS, most popular data, and they give you totals and percentages. So with that in mind, we are going to access data for median income in Indiana in 2022. That is the goal for our first example, to get that data back from the API. And it's pretty simple as you can get, getting data for a single estimate and single geography. So going to the live site here, you'll go to api.census.gov or census.gov/developers. This is the landing page we showed earlier, lots of helpful resources, but I like to start by clicking available APIs at the top. So this is one entry point into the Discovery tool is through the Available APIs tab. Remember, I had a slide that listed high-level surveys and programs that are available. That's what you're seeing here. And you can drill into options in order to make a more specific selection. So essentially, this way takes us step by step to get to the data set we're looking for. First, I'm going to click American Community Survey. I see popular options including 1-year and 5-year data. And since I want data for the state level, I'm going to choose the 1-year estimates. These data are available for any geography with 65,000 people or more. So we know Indiana is well above that. I'll click ACS 1-year data. Scrolling through here, we can see some information about the different types of tables that are available. And then it gives you the different years. So it gives you the most recent by default. We can see we're clicked into 2022. If I wanted to access historical data, I could leverage these tabs at the top. There's more documentation, and then eventually we get to the different tables. So I mentioned data profiles is the best starting point for ACS if you're not sure which table type you need. Within each of these different types, you'll see 2 things of note: the examples and supported geographies and the variables. So I'm going to go ahead and click examples and supported geography first. This takes us to the Discovery tool for this data set. And I mentioned earlier, we're going to focus on the examples and the variables list. So starting with examples, this provides us a list of every possible level of geography that this data are provided for, as well as the 3-digit summary level code. We want data at the state level, so I see a line that says state. The code is 040. I'm going to make this a little bigger here. And then there are 2 examples. Now, the differences between these are only in the geography portion of these URLs. So this is where you can get a starting point to figure out which one of these 2 best meet your needs. The first URL ends in &4 equals state, and then it has that wildcard. So that means it gives you data for all states. Notice the second example has &4 equals state 06. That is a API request that gives you data for California. So for us, I'm going to choose the first one that gives data for all states and show how you can leverage the results to narrow that down to Indiana. You'll want to copy the URL. Now there's a variety of different ways that you can go about doing this. And once you open up a new tab here, I'm just going to move some things on my screen first and paste that. You may or may not see something prompting you for an API key. If you do see & key equals your key goes here, just delete it or enter your key and press enter. And this is our first API data request. It's simply asking for a list of all states in the US, and then it does give the 2-digit code associated with each state. So we can see very quickly that the state code for Indiana is 18. You can scroll or press Control F in order to find that. So from here, if we wanted to narrow our results from all states to Indiana, what you would do is click into your address bar, replace the wildcard symbol with 18, and press enter. Now I like to press enter every time I make an edit in my URL, and then if there's any mistake, I'll know exactly where I went wrong. So I always press enter between each step, and here we have data for Indiana. The last thing is to tell the API that we want data for median income and not just data for the geography name. So where do we find that? If you go back to the American Community Survey Available APIs page, remember there is the variables link here, and I'm going to open up the HTML option. This is a list of every variable in the data profiles dataset for for the 2022 ACS 1 year, you can see there's 1,386 variables. So this is why they are a code-based naming convention. The nice thing about the variables is you can usually, at least for the data profiles, press Control F and type in a keyword. So here I'm just going to type in median. I can see there are 24 instances of the word median somewhere on this page, and I'm going to take a look at them. So DP03_0062E is the first result. It says it's the estimate from the income and benefits section of this table. It's referencing total households, and it's giving me the median household income. And because this would be a value in dollars, that would be an estimate, not a percent estimate. So the very first variable actually happens to be what I'm looking for. Again, this also refers to the 62nd row of data in the estimate column of the corresponding data table if you are on data.census.gov. So from here, what I recommend is highlight the variable that you're interested in. Then I copy, so I'm just using my keyboard shortcuts, Control C, and then I go into the other open tab that I have and add that variable. So this is the variables section of our query. You can separate them just by a comma and then pasting your next one. And it needs to be exact. No space between the comma or the variables. It should be name, comma, DP03_0062E. And this is telling us that in Indiana, based on the 2022 ACS 1 year estimates, median household income was $66,785. So with that starting point, single estimate, single geography. I want to expand on this in our second example. How can you access data for multiple estimates and multiple geographies in one data request? For this example, we had lots of questions last time we gave this webinar about economic data. So we're going to highlight an example from the County Business Patterns data set. For this example, we're going to find what were the total number of establishments and employees in the mining sector across all counties in California in 2021. And even if you're not interested in data from economic programs or demographic or vice versa, the concepts and strategies throughout these examples apply to all of the different data sets. So I would encourage you to tune in, even if this particular example is not of interest to you, or if one of the other ones aren't. Again, the strategies are the same. So to get started, we would go again to api.census.gov. Before I click available APIs, I just wanted to show you additional context as to why we're clicking available APIs. If you were to click directly into the discovery tool and choose the HTML option is what I'm going to view. Essentially, the available APIs page is taking us to this particular section, but for the specific data set that we're interested in. So you're welcome to search this long list directly in the discovery tool, but do know that there, again, are 1,604 data sets. So your advantage to using the available APIs tab is that it provides a series of prompts to get you exactly where you're looking for as a starting point. So I'm going to click available APIs, scroll through, and we see again different options. Now you do need to know the surveyor program up front. So click County Business Patterns and Zip Code Business Patterns. And then from here, there's actually only one option to click into. So I'm going to click CBP and ZBP API. Scrolling through, this page gives me information about County Business Patterns Program and a link to their API, as well as the Zip Code Business Patterns Program with the corresponding link. I want county level data, so I'm going to choose County Business Patterns CBP APIs. From here, I get similar to what we saw for the ACS descriptive information at the top. We're clicked into the most recent available year. For this data set, it's 2021. We do have access to historical data if interested. And then this particular API only has one option listed on this page, but we do see those 4 familiar links that we saw before. We focus on examples and geographies and variables. So just like before, we're going to follow a similar process. I'm going to start with examples and geographies. It takes me to the one entry in the discovery tool for this data set, and we want to start with examples. So I'll click examples. It lists every available geography, the corresponding 3-digit code, just like it did for ACS. There are fewer supported geographies for this particular data. One thing that you'll notice is that the example URL is a little bit longer in this data set. But do notice that there are 3 entries for the county level, and there are differences in the geography portion of each of those. So the first one is an example, &4 equals county : wildcard. So it gives data for all counties. The second example has &4 county wildcard, & in state wildcard, gives you data for all counties across all states. It's a more formal way of saying the same exact thing that the first one does. And then the last example provides data for county 001 in state 01. So that would give us data for Autauga County, Alabama. We want data for all counties in California. I'm going to pick the second URL and edit it as a starting point. So in this case, you'll paste in a new tab, make sure there's no API key or anything at the end of your URL, and I'm going to press enter. You can leave the example query as is. I'm going to simplify it a bit to show you how you can just edit your geography and get a more simple view. So I'm just going to keep the variable first for name, which gives us the geography name. I'm going to delete everything else from name up until the ampersand, just so we don't have so many data values to look at in our results. I'm also going to delete the ending portion of the URL after the colon for state. This is limiting our results to essentially all establishments. And press enter. So I've simplified that query just to provide the geography name and then the geography portion of the URL, which is currently all counties across all states. Again, that was an optional step just for demonstration purposes and to simplify our view. Here I'm going to type in California. We can see very quickly that the 2-digit state code for California is 06. So if you want data for all counties in California, we'll keep the first wildcard for county, click into the URL and change the asterisk in state to 06 and press enter. Now, instead of getting data for all counties in the US, we've narrowed to all counties in California. So the last thing would be to tell this API which variables we want data for. We wanted all establishments, all employees in the mining sector. So just like for ACS, on the available county business patterns page, we'll click on the variables link. Now this particular data set, you'll notice that there isn't a code-based naming convention. They are more readable abbreviations for what these variables mean. The reason is that there's 28. So you'll typically see readable abbreviations for smaller data sets, code-based naming conventions for larger data sets, such as the ACS and decennial census. But this makes it a little bit easier for us to get what we're looking for. We can see right off the bat, EMP is the variable name for number of employees. So I'm going to highlight copy EMP, go back to my open tab with my API data request and start adding that in. So we click our cursor into the between name and the ampersand, type a comma and paste EMP and press enter. Now we have data showing us the total number of employees in each county in California. Next, we can continue to add the variables in this iterative process. So scrolling down on the page, we can see estab is the variable name for number of establishments. We can copy that, input it into our query, separate each one with a comma, press enter, and we can see the number of establishments in Alameda County. It's 41,470. So by default, though, this is giving us data for the entire business picture with paid employees in Alameda County. We wanted data for the mining sector specifically. So when you're working in the different data sets, there may be times where you are able to specify different categorical values, and the categorical variables are indicated with this note that says default displayed. If you see that in the required column, that's a good indication that this is a categorical variable. You can click on the variable link, in this case, NAICS 2017. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Before I click on it, and this will show you every possible NAICS code. So you may already know, based on your knowledge of the data set, that the 2-digit code for mining is 21, or you can click and see every possible value for what NAICS 2017 could be. And if the variable is categorical, you are able to limit your results to show data just for a particular category, such as 21. And the way that you do that, back in your API query, you can add to your URL, ampersand. You can input the variable name, which is NAICS 2017, type the equal sign, and then enter 21 as an example if you want to limit your results to the mining sector instead of all businesses. So here we have edited this URL. We're getting data for all counties in California. It's showing us first the geography name, such as Alameda County, California, the total number of employees, 183. The total number of establishments with paid employees is 8. This is referenced for specifically the mining sector, and 06001 are the state and county codes. And you'll see those categorical variables both in economic and demographic data sets. The last example I wanted to show is, what if you want data for an entire data table? For this, we're going to show a functionality called groups. I'm also going to show functionality called UCGID. This is functionality that allows you to request your geographies rather than using the ampersand for, using the geography ID. It also allows you to request data from multiple levels of geography in one query. So to demonstrate this, we're going to access table PCT12 from the 2020 Census, Demographic and Housing Characteristics for Indiana, Indianapolis, Carmel, Anderson metro area, and Marion County in one single request. By the way, PCT12 is the table that provides data for single year of age. You can use the group functionality and then put your table ID in parentheses in order to get all results for a table. This saves you from having to specify each variable individually. It will return it all by default. It also allows you to get data for all variables in the table, even if there's more than 50. And then the UCGID functionality, it's going to be similar to how we did the NAICS. You'll just type ampersand UCGID, an equal sign, and then you'll enter the geo ID or IDs that you're interested in getting data for. And you'll be using this instead of using ampersand for equals in your API query. For UCGID, you do need to use fully qualified GeoIDs. I'm showing an example of this for Indiana on screen. It's not just the 2-digit 18 state code. There's more to it for these fully qualified GeoIDs, and you can separate GeoIDs by a comma. We are working to add further documentation for this functionality, just for your awareness. But in the meantime, I did also want to point out two ways that you can find fully qualified GeoIDs. One is by using the API directly. If you put the variable geo_ID into your list of variables, it will provide you the fully qualified GeoID here. You can also pull up the data in data.census.gov, select the geography or geographies you're interested in, and when you download a table in the zip file format, there will be a column of the table for GeoID, and you can find them there. So let's go ahead with our live demonstration here for our final example. We're going to go to census.gov/developers. We'll click Available APIs. Choose Decennial Census. And then I'm going to choose Decennial Census 2020, 2010, 2000. We'll make sure we're clicked into the most recent 2020 vintage. And we wanted the demographic and housing characteristics file. That's the DHC. It's the second option here. And just like in our last three, we're always going to work off of an example query. I'm not going to type this out from scratch. So I'll click Examples and Supported Geography. Then click into Examples. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull data from this state query. So I'm going to find the GeoID for Indiana. Just like before, there's two examples for state. I'm going to choose the one state:wildcard. Open this in a new tab and press enter. So we showed you earlier how you can reference this to find that the state code for Indiana is 18. So I'm going to replace the wildcard with 18. But what I want is the fully qualified GeoID. So I mentioned it's geo_ID. If you were on the variables page, you would also see that it's listed in this list of variables for the data set. This one takes a while to load, but here it's geo_ID. So that's where you could reference that this exists. Clicking into the URL after name, I'm going to type a comma, geo_ID, and press enter. So this is one way that you could grab the fully qualified GeoID for your API data requests. Here, I'm going to go ahead and show you how you can, if you have this information, rather than use state, you could delete that from your URL, type $UCGID, then enter in that fully qualified GeoID and press enter. In here, we've asked for this data using a new way of searching for geography. And the primary benefit of this method, again, is that you can cut across different geography levels in one same data request. So after this, I've already done some research on my own and found GeoIDs for other geographies I'm interested in, such as the GeoID for Marion County and the GeoID for the Indianapolis metro area. So putting those in and press enter, we see we get data for all three of those geographies in that one data request. The last thing I wanted to show is the groups functionality, where it says name and GeoID if we want data for a single year of age, PCT12, or any entire table from this data set, you just put the group in as your variable. So it's group in lowercase letters, and then your table ID, PCT12 in parentheses, and press enter. Notice that this is very extensive. There are multiple values provided in this table. So this first chunk is giving you all of the labels. The second chunk is giving you all of the values for our first geography, which is Indiana. Then we get data for Marion County and then the metro area at the end. So if you wanted to put this in a readable format, you could right-click the page, click Save As. And I'm just going to type PCT12 2020.csv. If you do want it in CSV format, you need to specify .csv and you need to change the type to all files and click Save. That will provide that download. And once you open it up, I'm going to use Excel. Notice that this is a very readable format, and it actually looks very similar to how data downloads would look in data.census.gov. The main challenge with this is pulling in labels associated with what these values mean. So how do I know that PCT12_001N means total population? Well, one way you could get this is you could individually pull the information from the variables webpage for this data set. That would be a little tedious, but you could consult and scroll to find PCT12 and do this one by one. The other option is that you can, on any of these variable web pages, you could delete the HTML from the end and press Enter. And this will give you a list of variables for this data set. Oops, and I actually apologize, I meant to do that here on this variables page. So just delete .html and press Enter. This gives you that list that you're looking for. You can also save this page. I'm going to save it as CSV, choose all files, and open up that. So here is your list of values and labels. So if you wanted to pull this information in bulk, you can use some editing in Excel. I'm going to walk through this quickly, again, noting that this is being recorded and that the steps are shown in slide format. So the first thing I'm going to do is just replace all of these special characters actually in both of these files, my variable as well as this original download from data. I'm just using the find and replace functionality. I'm using find all instances of these double quotation marks. I'm leaving replace with blank, and I'm choosing replace all. This will find and replace all 8 instances of those double quotation marks. And I'm doing the same thing to get rid of these brackets, the open bracket and the close bracket. The next thing I wanted to do is copy the information from columns A, B, and C from the variables page. And I'm going to go to my PCT12 table and click the plus sign to open up a new worksheet and paste that information in. So here I have all of the variable reference information included and my original table data in the first sheet. You can use the VLOOKUP function in Excel in order to find the matching variable and pull the label into column C2. So here I've inserted a row 2, I'm clicked into cell C2, and I'm going to type in that cell equals VLOOKUP. I'm going to put in open parentheses, and I'm going to click on cell C1. So this is me telling Microsoft Excel that I want to find a match for the contents in cell C1, PC12_001N. Then I'm going to click here and type a comma. Then I need to choose where I want to tell Excel to look for this match. So I'm going to choose, click into cell A1 in my sheet 1. I'm going to press Control-Shift right arrow and Control-Shift down in order to select all the contents of this page, and then press F4 one time. So that's going to lock that location in place so it doesn't go looking elsewhere as I'm shifting and spreading this formula across other cells. We'll type a comma. Then I'm going to type a 2. This tells that I want Excel to return the label from column 2. And then I'm going to type a comma and type a 0. And this tells Excel that I'm looking for an exact match. I want exactly PCT12_001N. I don't want anything similar to it pulled through. And then you type your end parentheses and press enter. So that is a way that you can, in bulk, find a particular label, and then you can spread this across to your other variables on your spreadsheet if you'd like to apply this information all at once. So I know I went through that fast, but we did have that as a resource for you to look back on. Some other resources to learn more. One limitation I wanted to mention with API calls is extremely large data requests could time out when using the UCGID functionality, particularly if you're getting data for a large number of geographic areas. Another thing to be mindful with the API, especially with code-based data sets like the ACS, is that variables can change from year to year. For instance, in 2018 to 2016, you might be able to just update the year in your URL seamlessly. But in other cases, it may not work out as expected. So in this example, there was a change in the table from 2016 to the 2018 version. And if you wanted to get data for the population under 5 years, you would need to use the variable ending in 5E in 2018, but you'd need to use the variable ending in 4E in 2016. And the reason is that the tables can have rows that get added, deleted, or modified over time. In 2018, there was a row to the table added for sex ratio. So that pushes all of the variables below it in the data table from the API and makes them a little bit different from one year to the next year. So it is easy to change your values from year to year, but you do need to take some time to verify. If you'd also like more resources for learning about the API, we do have workshops. These are hands-on opportunities for you to get practice and exercises. They're anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. We do have one scheduled for June, and we have further dates coming soon. So you can scan the QR code right now or visit the link if you'd like that hands-on practice and to sign up for a workshop. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Deb.
Thank you so much, Tyson. All right. And in just a few moments here, we're actually going to begin the audio question and answer session. So a bit of a refresher on the instructions. To ask your question over the line, we invite you to please use the raise hand icon. You can find it located next to your name in WebEx or at the bottom of WebEx. When we call your name, please unmute yourself to ask your question. And just remember to allow a couple of seconds before you speak because there is a little bit of a lag. So if you do have questions, you're more than welcome to start queuing up now. And before we open up those lines, I would like to invite you all to give us your thoughts on today's webinar through a webinar survey form. So this evaluation survey will appear in a window automatically when you exit WebEx. Please don't close it. We would really like to get your feedback. If you have any notes for us on ways that we can improve our webinars, or if you have any other ideas on topics that you would like to see us cover in the future. So please take a moment to fill that out once we wrap the webinar. So if you have any questions remaining after our session concludes today, or if you'd simply prefer to email us your question, please feel free to reach out to any of the email inboxes listed here. If you are a member of the media, you may contact the Public Information Office at pio@census.gov. And for general data.census.gov questions from the public or for training requests, please feel free to reach out to the Center for Enterprise Dissemination. All right, so let's take a look and see if we have any questions in queue. I see we have a question from Michael. Can we please unmute Michael's line? And Michael, if you can hear us, you should be able to unmute yourself and ask your question. All right, so we'll just give that a couple more minutes. Tyson, I will turn it back over to you and see if anyone else has questions.
Great. And I do see we have a hand up. I did want to take a moment to make sure everyone knows that we do have a developers forum. So the option is the API's developers forum on Slack. You see the URL here in order to join, and we encourage you to also pose your questions. We not only monitor this at the Census Bureau and respond, but you can also take advantage of the knowledge from other data users like yourself. And Deb, I think we're ready if you want to take that question.
Yes, can we please unmute Nicole's line? And Nicole, you should be able to unmute yourself just a couple minutes or a couple seconds before you speak. Yeah. Can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so one quick technical question. So when you query the data with the API and the URL, so do you just use comma when you input a variable name and comma when you don't need to specify the values, but when you want to specify a value, you use the and sign to specify values. Is that correct?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. If you want just to specify the variable in general, you put them in get equals and you separate each variable with the comma. And yes, if you want to limit your results for a specific value of a categorical variable, somewhere in your API query, you need to put ampersand, the variable name equals, and the value you would like to specify it by. So you are spot on. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole, for that question.
And I also noticed a similar question in the chat. Why not add the NAICS code in the get section? If you were to just add it in the get section and separate it with the comma, that would give you information for the default NAICS value, which happens to be 00 for the data set we were working with. If you don't add the limiter, you may not get the information for the exact NAICS that you're interested in. But again, you can put that ampersand NAICS equals 21 at the end of your query or between the list of variables and geographies. It doesn't have to be exactly where I put it, but there are two different ways there. I'm sorry, Deb.
Thank you, Tyson. No, thank you for clarifying. And Nicole, I think you said you have another question. You're more than welcome to raise your hand again, and we'll get to that. For now, can we please unmute Sandip's question or line, please?
Hi, I was wondering, is it possible to use API to download microdata from Census or no?
So we do have microdata APIs. Everything that's on data.census.gov/MDAT or the microdata access tool is accessible through the microdata API, which is public. There's a microdata API user guide that walks through how to make those requests, and you can get data either for the individual microdata records through the get. I'm trying to remember this offhand. I don't work with it too often. I'm pretty sure that's the get option. And then there's also a tabulate type of query, and that's if you want the microdata API to return a custom table or custom statistics to you. So those are two main different types of use cases for the microdata API. And I would encourage you to check out the user guide if you'd like to learn more about it. Thank you for the question.
All right, thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question. And I'll go ahead and send out that link through the chat as well if anyone else is interested. All right, can we please unmute Nicole's line one more time?
Yeah, sorry. So, okay, in this tutorial, to use the API, you kind of have to manually type in the specified, for example, country or state. Is there any resources or workshop in the future that we can actually query the data more code-based, like in Python or R?
Yeah, so our communications team, our role is to help kind of understand the layout of API queries and how to access it directly from the Census Bureau. We don't have anything planned in Python or R. There is a recorded webinar that was done in partnership with someone at the Census Bureau and an external party that showed a demonstration of using the Tidy Census package in R. That package is not provided directly by the Census Bureau. So that's why we don't provide education and support for that specifically. But if you're interested in checking out that recorded webinar, if you want to shoot us an email, we can get you the link to it. And that would be the best resource that I know of internally that we could route you to.
Great, thank you for that question. All right, looks like we have a couple more. Can we unmute Sandip's line, please?
I think my raised hand didn't change since my
No worries. No, thank you for that. Appreciate it. All right, can we please unmute Philip's line? And Philip, if you can hear us, you can unmute yourself. Just give it a couple seconds and then speak your question. Not hearing anything from Philip. Let's unmute Daniel's line. And Daniel, if you can hear us, you should be able to unmute yourself on your end. Let's see, try that again, see if that works. Okay, it looks like, oh, you might be unmuted, Daniel. Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, hi there.
Thanks. Yeah, I was wondering if you could, first, I would love a link to the recording you mentioned about Tidy Census. And also I was wondering if you could talk about figuring out what geographies are available for different tables based on whether they're on the 1 year or 5 year tables.
So in terms of ACS 1 and 5 year, there are resources on the ACS website that talk about different geographic availability. If you're trying to find out directly on data.census.gov or on the API, if you're in the examples and supported geography and in examples, you'll see that the 5 year page has different supported levels, more supported levels than the 1 year page does. Other than that, you'd have to rely on population thresholds or referencing the ACS documentation that we could send you to if you want to write in your question so we could respond with a direct link.
Okay, thank you.
But, this does give you a good starting point. For instance, like you wouldn't see census tracts in 1 year, but you would see it on 5 year or block group or zip code tabulation areas. So that's one way that you can at least know the levels that are available in one versus the other. Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And it looks like maybe Philip's line is unmuted. Philip, can you hear us?
Yes, I can now. Thanks.
Wonderful.
Asking if I need some additional training, can I request for my team to be trained from your staff independently?
Yes, we actually have a couple different training options available to you. So we would encourage you to write us in. First and foremost, you can reach our team at sed.cedsci.outreach@census.gov. That is the email address that's shown on this screen right now. And I'll just pause there for just a second. Moving on, though, we do have another training team, the data dissemination specialists. So these folks are hosting this webinar in collaboration with us, and they're also specialized in providing training assistance at the local level. So there is a data dissemination specialist assigned to your state. If you'd like to request a training with them, you can shoot an email to census.askdata@census.gov or 1-844-ASK-DATA. So just providing that to you as an additional resource. They cover training across all topics and tools at the Census Bureau, and we specialize specifically in the API and data.census.gov. So we'd be happy to take that request and cover it between us.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for all of the wonderful questions that you've submitted to us so far. Tyson, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Did want to also point out we have a resources page for using the API. If you visit the link here or come across it on the developer's webpage, you'll find helpful information like the API user guide, links to recorded webinars, PDFs, and other helpful information. If you have questions when using the API, please reach us at census.data@census.gov or pose your question to the developers forum on Slack. Deb, was there anything else that we have?
Let me double check. Oh, it looks like we have a question from Susan. Do you want to unmute her line? Okay, Susan, can you hear us?
Yes, fine. Thank you for training. I had a quick question. We're in the process of implementing Power BI website for our human resources information. Is there anything special that we would need as far as being able to integrate data? And, you know, again, this is kind of new to me and I'm not sure, you know, how all that happens. And I thought maybe you could help.
I don't personally use Power BI, so I would encourage you, again, this kind of touches on the question we got earlier about support for R or Python. We provide support for accessing the data directly. So I would encourage you to pose your question to the developers forum on Slack to see if anyone has maybe some guidance resources that they might be able to share with you or words of wisdom.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
All right, Tyson, I don't believe we have any remaining questions. We already took Philip's, I believe.
Great. Well, I appreciate you all joining the webinar, and we look forward to continuing to hear from you through email and other forums, and we hope to see you again in a future webinar at the Census Bureau. Thank you for spending the afternoon with us.